Hello and welcome to PMI's Uncommon Sense podcast, tools to improve your work forever. I'm Susanna Clark, Managing Partner with PMI, the performance improvement consulting and training firm. Our Uncommon Sense podcast is a 15-minute conversation with our expert consultants. They talk a lot of common sense, although much of it is not common practice. And that's what this podcast is all about. We want you to be inspired to improve your business through learning more about the tools which can help you succeed and grow. Hello and welcome to PMI's podcast, Uncommon Sense, Tools to Improve Your Work Forever. I'm Susanna Clark, and today I'm joined by Des Kelly. Des, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, hi Sus. So I'm Des Kelly, Partner Consultant within PMI, and I have been for the last 19 years or so. Prior to that, I was in manufacturing and engineering. My last role was as the Director of Quality and Process Development for Rolls-Royce and Bentley motor cars. I also lecture at the University of Warwick and on advanced tools of quality. And most of the work that I do within PMIs with leadership teams around the world, helping them optimize their businesses.
Super, thank you. So this is the first in a series of podcasts that we're running, which is all about strategy. And as Des has said, he does a lot of work with leadership teams. So that's why we've invited Des to join us for this series of episodes. What I think it would be really helpful would be just, Des, can you just talk a bit about strategy itself? What it is, what it means to the organization, why is it important?
Okay, well, I think from my perspective, strategy is about one very simple thing. It's about making the decisions. The decisions about what it is we are going to be doing, possibly more importantly though, those things that we're not going to do. So strategy is all about the leadership team making decisions and getting those decisions actioned. To be absolutely robust upon that, though, it really comes in three phases. So strategy will come in the strategic analysis phase when we are looking outside of our own organisation to understand the world and the environment in which our business operates. And we're using a number of lenses to look through to study that environment to allow us to develop theories about how we can improve what our business should be, what it should not be, where we're going to go, where we're not going to go. We need to have robust studies to understand the direction in which our business should go in. Once we have undertaken that study, we'll be faced with a series of strategic choices, decisions that we need to make. And for that, we'll need to establish the objectives and the key goals that we've got, but it all fits into this bracket of strategic choices, where we've established what it is we are going to do and what it is we are not going to do. And once we're clear about those objectives and those choices that we've made, we now need to get that deployed throughout the organization. There is little point in you spending money developing a strategy if the only people who know about it are sat around the leadership table. The strategy has to be deployed so every single individual in the organization has some understanding of their role in delivering the strategy. So that third element is strategy implementation or strategy deployment throughout the organization. So three phases: strategic analysis, strategic choice, and implementation.
Super. In terms of strategy, are we talking short-term, long-term? What's the sort of time scales, do you think, for developing strategy?
Well, typically, the strategies would be around about 5 years. Some people in many organisations have to go much further than that because their product landscape is such they need to understand what it is where they're going to be in years to come. So take, for example, the aerospace industries. You are not going to be changing your model of an aircraft every 2-3 years. You're thinking 15, 20 years out. So depending on the organization, your horizon may change, but typically it's about 5 years is the mid to long-term strategy that many organizations go for. And what you've got to bear in mind is the further out you are looking after 5 years, the harder it is to predict whether you're correct. So those are the things. So on that basis, if it's hard to predict, you've got to have a regular check-in. Are the theories we had about what's happening with our market and what's happening in the world we're operating in, are they being seen to be true? And you look for evidence that says, yes, our thoughts were correct. And you need to also look for evidence to say, do you know what, we missed something and we really need to think again. Therefore, whilst the 5 years may be the target period for it, your strategy is not something you do once a year. It's something that is continual. You are evaluating and understanding, because the world can change within a matter of moments that you need to respond to.
And for the people who are working in the organisation, so not the leaders, you talked about deploying the strategy so that people understand what they need to work on in order to realise the strategy. Presumably for some of them, those are going to be much shorter term timescales, that X has to be done within a much shorter timescale in order to enable the 5-year goal eventually.
Yes, and there's a word of caution I need to put in here as well, is that sometimes you need to be a little bit careful about your exact strategic intent, because you may not wish it to go outside of your organisation. But what needs to be clear is that if you're planning on to move into a market, if you're planning to move to an environment that you're not currently in, you need to be able to explain the objectives you've got to, but then the means by which those objectives are going to be delivered. And it's when we start to talk about the means, by how are we going to deliver this strategic objective, that's where the people in the organisation really get involved, and they need to understand that they're involved in this because of a particular reason. Okay.
So there's a lot of upfront
Not too sure
work.
That was clear.
As I hear it, there's upfront work to understand where you are. There's some, now we understand where we are and what's going on, we can make some decisions about goals and objectives, and then we take those goals and objectives and we deploy them to people with a word of caution, depending on how secret it is or the implications of the decisions that we're making as an organisation.
Yeah, and I say that, Suze, because there are lots of organisations who, quite genuinely, they can't allow their strategic intents to be overly broadcast outside, because it effectively gives maybe their competition the opportunity to intervene. So one does need to be a little bit careful, particularly on the deployment side, is that be conscious of the fact is that to get people aligned, they need to have had an understanding of the purpose and the reason for why they are doing something. But then that's tainted or tinged or coloured by the fact is you've got to be careful sometimes what you're going to be saying, because your strategy is how you're responding to your marketplace and the world around you. And that could be very useful to people who may want to eat your dinner.
And we talked about timescales, and you mentioned in that your strategy has to be sort of a living document. It's something you have to review regularly. Yep. I mean, realistically, are we talking monthly? Are we talking every 3 months, every 6 months? You said not a year. It needs to be more frequent than that.
Well, I think that when we start to look at the tools that you might use in strategic analysis, strategic deployment, or strategic choices, and then strategic implementation, you'll notice that they are ongoing processes. But I think you need to check in. And certainly for me, checking in once a quarter is about a good cadence. There may be some things you may deliberately say we'll monitor this on a weekly basis, if it's depending on the criticality of it. But it's what is important is that strategy is not a once a year activity which is discrete and on its own. Strategy is a continuum where you are challenging your thoughts and your theories about where your business is and where it should be on a regular basis. And that's going to be one of the key things. And so organizations, for example, who will sit down in October and say, right, we're just going to do our strategy document for the following year, you're probably 9 months too late. You need to be on the game right at the very top. And it's a continuum.
Okay, thank you, Des. So hopefully that gives you all an understanding of what we're going to be talking about in terms of the larger subject area of strategy. So as I said at the beginning, they're going to be a series of mini podcasts supporting this. We're going to break them down into 3 groups, as Des described. So understanding the world in which we operate, establishing the end goals and objectives, goal deployment, and aligning the organization. And then within each of those, we're going to have a series of tools that Des is going to talk through in each episode. So things like Porter's 5 Forces, PESTLE, SWOT, Force Field, the 7 management and planning tools, the 3 question model, Hoshin Cannery X matrices, tree diagram, and so on. So lots of content here. You can consume each of the different modules, each tool per module, or you can listen to them all in one go. It's going to be up to you. But hopefully you'll find this a useful contribution to think about how you can work on strategy for your organisation. So Des, very much looking forward to working with you on these. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you, Sue. Been good fun. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. And if you want to know any more, please do go to our Knowledge Hub, pmi.co.uk, where you can find all of our content. If you want to talk to any of us, or you'd like to get in touch with Des, then you can contact any of us through team@pmi.co.uk. And if you're listening to this podcast, you probably do know how to find it, but it is available on all podcast channels. Thank you very much for joining us today, and look forward to hearing you again soon. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. You can find more episodes of our Uncommon Sense Tools to Improve Your Work Forever in our Knowledge Hub on our website, or, of course, your favourite podcast platform. And do subscribe so you never miss an episode. Don't forget to check out the show notes for this episode, where you'll find links to more content on this topic, which includes webinar recordings, toolbox guides, blogs, and infographics, and our training page. You can always drop us a line on team@pmi.co.uk and arrange a time to have a call to talk about how these tools can help you in your organisation. We'd really love to hear from you.